The letter from MIT felt like a key, a tangible piece of metal that could unlock the entire world. I remember holding it, the paper thick and expensive under my trembling fingers, the bold, crimson logo a promise of everything I had worked for. My dad, Mark, had been my biggest cheerleader. Ever since Mom died when I was 10, it had been us against the world. He was the one who bought me my first telescope, who stayed up late helping me with calculus, who started my college fund with the motto, for Alara Vance, future astrophysicist. The sky isn't the limit, it's the beginning. That all changed when Brenda entered the picture. She was sleek and polished, a woman who spoke in soft, measured tones that seemed to smooth over all the rough edges of our lives. With her came her son, Liam, a boy my age with an easy smile and the kind of effortless athletic grace I, with my nose always in a book, could only marvel at. Suddenly, our cozy us against the world duo became a crowded, awkward quartet. My dad started changing. His boisterous laugh became quieter, his casual flannel shirts replaced by crisp, collared ones Brenda picked out. He spoke less about my astrophysics destiny and more about Liam's potential on the football field. The college fund, once a frequent topic of proud conversation, became a subject he'd deftly avoid. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just a normal family adjustment. The shattering came 2 weeks after my MIT acceptance. I needed to make the first tuition deposit. I sat Dad down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd once built model rockets. Dad, I need to access the college fund for the deposit. The deadline is next Friday. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stirred his coffee, the clinking of the spoon against the ceramic the only sound in the room. Brenda was standing by the counter, ostensibly organizing a spice rack, but her posture was rigid. She was listening. About that, Ella, he began, his voice strained. We had to reallocate some resources. Reallocate? The word sounded alien. What does that mean? It's a dedicated account. We've been putting money in it for 8 years. He finally looked up, and the guilt in his eyes was quickly smothered by a defiant defensiveness I'd never seen before. Liam got a partial scholarship to State University, but it wasn't enough. Their tuition was due immediately. Brenda and I talked, and we decided it was the right thing to do. The world tilted on its axis. You what? You used my college fund for Liam's tuition? Now, don't be dramatic, Brenda interjected, her voice like sweet poison. It's not your money, Alara. It's family money. We're a family now. We support each other. I stared at my father, begging him with my eyes to deny it, to say this was some horrible joke. Dad? The MIT money? The money for my future? He sighed, running a hand over his face. Ella, be reasonable. Liam needed it. His future is just as important. You're brilliant, everyone knows that. You can get scholarships, take out loans. You'll figure it out. You always do. You'll figure it out. The 3 words he used to say with pride now felt like a curse, an abdication of his responsibility. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, a tide of betrayal so strong it threatened to drown me. So you stole my dream to pay for his? A boy you've known for 2 years? What about the promise you made me? What about Mom? Mentioning my mother was a mistake. His face hardened. Don't you bring your mother into this. She would have wanted what's best for the whole family. That was the moment I knew I had lost him. He wasn't my dad anymore. He was Brenda's husband, Liam's stepfather. I was just a relic from a past life he was trying to paint over. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. I can't believe you. My voice was a choked whisper. I ran to my room, packed a bag with shaking hands, and left. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that house, a museum of my stolen future. I tried calling him the next day, and the day after. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were left unread. A week later, I sent a desperate, handwritten letter. It was returned to my friend's address where I was staying, unopened, with "Return to Sender" scrawled across the front in Brenda's elegant script. He had erased me. Just like that. The man who had promised me the stars had grounded me, stolen my key, and locked the door from the inside. They went on to build their perfect life. Brenda's social media became a gallery of their happiness: Dad and Liam at a football game, the three of them on a pristine beach vacation, a family portrait where they looked complete, whole. There was no trace of me. I lost the MIT spot. I enrolled in community college, working 2 jobs to pay for it. I served greasy eggs in a diner and tutored calculus to kids who had more pocket money than I had for groceries. Every night, I'd fall into bed, exhausted and aching with a cold, hard anger. They thought I was gone. They thought they had broken me. But as I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, a different thought began to form. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about survival. But survival, I soon realized, could be sharpened into a weapon. They had built their perfect life on the ashes of mine. They had no idea I was about to find the one thing, the one move, that would turn their perfect illusion to dust. The first year was a blur of exhaustion and caffeine. My world shrank to the triangle between the community college library, the clattering kitchen of the Greasy Spoon diner, and my tiny, damp basement apartment. While Brenda posted photos of their perfect family on a ski trip in Aspen, I was scraping dried ketchup off plates and using my tip money to buy second-hand textbooks. The bitterness was a constant companion, a cold stone in my gut. My dad, Mark, and his new family existed in a different universe, one I only glimpsed through the curated window of social media. Liam was thriving at State University, the golden boy quarterback. Brenda was chairing charity galas. My dad looked happy, relaxed. He had successfully excised the difficult, ambitious daughter who reminded him of a life before Brenda. I was a loose thread, and he had snipped me clean. The change began not with a bang, but with a box. My maternal grandmother passed away, a woman I barely knew, and her lawyer contacted me. There was no money, no property. Just a single, paid-up storage unit in my name. The lawyer said my mother, Sarah, had rented it years ago and my grandmother had kept up the payments. One rainy Saturday, I pried open the roll-up door of Unit 23B. It didn't smell like a place of treasure. It smelled of dust, forgotten paper, and time. Inside were dozens of cardboard boxes, all labeled in my mother's neat, architectural handwriting. I expected old clothes, maybe some childhood memorabilia. What I found was my mother's soul. My mom, Sarah Vance, had been a graphic designer. That's what my dad had always told me. It was a neat, simple label. But these boxes told a different story. They were filled with canvases, hundreds of them, ranging from small, intimate sketches to large, breathtaking abstract paintings. They were vibrant, chaotic, and brilliant. Alongside the art were her journals. I spent the next few weeks devouring them. I'd finish my shift at the diner, my clothes smelling of fried onions, and I'd sit on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by her life's work. Her journals weren't just diaries, they were a dialogue with her art. She wrote about color theory, about the emotional weight of a single brushstroke, about her struggles to be taken seriously as an artist. And then I found the name, Alastair Finch. Alastair Finch was a renowned art critic and patron who had died a few years ago. According to my mother's journals, he had been her mentor, her champion. He had discovered her at a small local art fair and had been convinced she was the next great voice in post-war abstraction. He had purchased several of her early pieces. My heart hammered against my ribs. In one of her last entries, dated just a month before the car accident that took her life, she wrote, "Alastair called today. He believes the Celestial Navigation series is my masterpiece. He's arranged for a trust to be established, tied to the collection. He says it will ensure my work is protected, and that Alara will never have to worry about chasing her own stars." He called it an inheritance of stardust. An inheritance. A trust. It was all there, in her own words. I frantically searched the boxes. In a dusty portfolio, I found a folder containing official-looking letters between my mother and Finch's legal team, outlining the creation of the Sarah Vance Art Trust. The trust's purpose was twofold: to preserve and promote her collection, and to provide for her daughter's education and well-being. The funds would be unlocked upon the formal valuation and exhibition of her work. I sat back, stunned. My father had to have known about this. After she died, he was the executor of her estate. Why had he never mentioned it? I scrolled through Brenda's latest social media post. It was a photo of their newly redecorated living room. It was all beige and chrome, a sterile monument to their good taste. And there, hanging over the fireplace, was a painting. It was large, abstract, a swirl of deep blues and explosive golds. I recognized it instantly from a photo in my mom's journal. It was the centerpiece of the Celestial Navigation series. The caption Brenda wrote read, "Finally found the perfect piece to tie the room together. Just some old thing Mark had in storage. Just some old thing." He hadn't just hidden the trust. He had discarded her legacy as meaningless clutter. He probably sold off the other pieces from the series for pennies to local decorators, never understanding their true significance or value. He had erased my mother just as completely as he had erased me. The cold stone of bitterness in my gut began to burn. This was no longer just about a stolen college fund. It was about resurrecting a legacy. My father and Brenda had built their perfect life on a foundation of lies and erasure, displaying my mother's masterpiece as a decorative prop. I looked around at the canvases covering my floor, at the journals filled with my mother's brilliant mind. This was my inheritance. Not of dust, but of stardust. And I knew what my one move had to be. It wouldn't be a lawsuit or an angry confrontation. It would be a spectacle. I was going to reintroduce the world to Sarah Vance. And in doing so, I would hold up a mirror to my father's perfect, hollow life, and let the truth shatter it to pieces. The idea was audacious, borderline insane for a broke community college student who smelled faintly of diner grease. I was going to orchestrate a major, posthumous solo exhibition for a completely unknown artist, my mother. My weapon wasn't anger, it was provenance. And my battlefield would be the one place Brenda and my father cared about most, the court of public opinion and social status. My first step was to contact the Finch Foundation, the organization Alastair Finch had established to support emerging artists. I didn't call as a wronged daughter seeking a handout. I crafted an email as a researcher, an academic. To the director of curation, I wrote, "I am writing to you today as the executor of the estate of the late artist Sarah Vance. I have recently unearthed her complete works, along with extensive journals and correspondence detailing her close mentorship with your founder, Mr. Alastair Finch. I believe we have a significant, undiscovered talent on our hands." I attached high-resolution photos of the paintings and scans of the key journal pages and letters. For 3 agonizing days, there was silence. I refreshed my email every 30 seconds, my hope dwindling with each empty inbox. Then, a reply came. It was from a man named Julian Croft, the Foundation's young, ambitious head curator. He was intrigued, but cautious. "The work is compelling," he wrote, "but we would need to authenticate everything." We arranged a meeting. I rented a U-Haul and, with the help of a friend, carefully transported a dozen of the best paintings and all the journals to the Finch Foundation's sleek, downtown office. I walked in wearing the one decent blazer I owned, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Julian was sharp, intense, with eyes that missed nothing. He and his team spent hours examining the brushwork, the canvases, the paper of the journals. They cross-referenced names and dates from the journals with the Foundation's archives. The moment of validation came when an archivist found Alastair Finch's own private journals. He had written extensively about the brilliant, reclusive Vance, calling her work cosmically articulate. It was all there. The trust, the mentorship, the profound belief in her talent. Julian looked at me, his professional skepticism melting into genuine excitement. "Miss Vance," he said, and my name had never sounded so powerful, "you haven't just found some paintings. You've uncovered a lost chapter of art history. The Foundation will put its full weight behind this. We're going to give your mother the debut she deserved. Over the next 6 months, I became an architect of my own design. I wasn't just Alara, the diner waitress. I was Alara Vance, the curator of the Sarah Vance estate. I worked side by side with Julian. I learned about gallery lighting, press releases, and art valuation. The trust was authenticated, but the funds remained locked until the official exhibition and appraisal. It didn't matter. I was fueled by something more potent than money. Our biggest challenge was locating the rest of the Celestial Navigation series. My father had sold them. My gut instinct about the painting over his fireplace was my starting point. Posing as a student researching local art collectors for a paper, I made a few calls. It was surprisingly easy. My dad, eager to offload my mother's clutter to fund his new life, had sold the entire series for a pittance to a single buyer, Brenda's parents. They were known in their wealthy suburban circle for their eclectic but ultimately tasteless art collection. They had no idea what they owned. They just liked the colors. The Finch Foundation's lawyers sent a polite but firm letter. It explained that the paintings were part of a legally protected artistic trust and had been sold improperly. It offered to buy them back at a generous premium over what they had paid, a fraction of their true worth, but enough to make them feel like they got a good deal. Eager to avoid any legal trouble and pleased with the profit, they agreed immediately. The collection was whole again. The final piece of the plan was the invitation list. We targeted every major art critic, gallery owner, and influential socialite in the state. And then, I prepared 3 special invitations. They were printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, featuring a high-quality image of Celestial Navigation No. 1 on the front. I drove to my father's pristine suburban house, the one my future had paid for, and slid them into the mail slot myself. 1 for Mark Vance. 1 for Brenda Vance. And 1 for Liam. Inside, the invitation read, "The Finch Foundation cordially invites you to the world premiere exhibition of the collected works of Sarah Vance." And at the bottom, I had the printer add a small, handwritten style font, a personal touch just for them. It was a line I had taken from one of my mother's journals, a note she had written about my father. He sees the paint, but not the starlight. The trap was set. They would walk into that gallery expecting a minor curiosity, a ghost from my father's past. They had no idea they were walking into a perfectly constructed monument to everything they had tried to bury. They were about to learn the true value of what they had thrown away. The night of the exhibition, the gallery was electric. It was a world away from my basement apartment, a universe of sparkling wine, quiet intellectual chatter, and the subtle scent of money. The walls, once bare, were alive with my mother's soul. Her paintings radiated a power and a passion that hushed the room. Under the expert gallery lighting, the Celestial Navigation series looked like captured galaxies. I stood near the entrance with Julian, dressed in a simple, elegant black dress the foundation had insisted on buying for me. I didn't feel like an imposter. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was not Alara the waitress, or Alara the abandoned daughter. I was Sarah Vance's legacy. Then, they arrived. My father, Mark, looked confused, holding the invitation as if it were a foreign object. Brenda was on his arm, her face a mask of patronizing curiosity. She scanned the opulent crowd, no doubt looking for people she knew. Liam trailed behind them, looking deeply uncomfortable, his usual jock confidence completely gone. They saw me. A flicker of shock crossed my father's face, quickly replaced by a storm of conflicting emotions. Brenda's smile was tight, brittle. Alara. What a surprise. This is quite the event you've managed to put together. Her tone implied I had won a raffle. Hello, Brenda. Dad. Liam. My voice was calm, steady. I'm so glad you could make it. I wanted you to be here. I led them on a personal tour. It was the most surreal and empowering walk of my life. I was the expert, they were the ignorant audience. This one is called Proxima's Embrace, I said, stopping before a canvas of fiery reds and deep violets. Mom wrote in her journal that she was trying to capture the feeling of gravitational pull, the invisible force that holds everything together. She painted it the year you two got married, Dad. His eyes widened slightly. We moved on. With every painting, I wove a story, using my mother's own words from her journals. I was giving them back the history they had never bothered to learn. The final stop was the centerpiece, the Celestial Navigation series, hanging in a place of honor. And this, of course, is the complete series, I said, my voice clear and ringing. It's what the critic Alastair Finch called her masterpiece. Its preliminary valuation is substantial. Brenda scoffed softly, a derisive little puff of air. Well, isn't that something? To think, this was just gathering dust in our garage. The moment had come. Julian gave me a subtle nod and moved towards the small podium at the center of the room. The crowd quieted. He gave a glowing introduction, speaking of the tragedy of lost talent and the miracle of rediscovery. Then he said, "And now, I'd like to introduce the person who made this all possible. The woman who single-handedly resurrected her mother's legacy. Her daughter, Ilara Vance." I stepped onto the podium. The light was warm on my face. I found my father, Brenda, and Liam in the crowd. Their faces were a portrait of disbelief. "Good evening," I began, my voice amplified by the microphone. My mother, Sarah Vance, believed that art was a form of truth. That a single brushstroke could tell a more honest story than 1,000 words. For a long time, her truth was silenced. Her story was forgotten. I didn't look at them yet. I spoke to the room, to the critics, to the cameras from the local news. I told the story of finding the boxes, of reading her journals, of discovering the brilliant, passionate woman the world never got to know. But my mother's legacy is more than just paint on canvas, I continued, my eyes now locking onto my father's. Her mentor, Alastair Finch, ensuring her work would be protected, established the Sarah Vance Art Trust. A trust designed to preserve her art and to provide for her daughter's education, a future she was determined I would have. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Brenda's face had gone from smug to ashen. Liam looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I saved the final blow, the one move I had been planning for months. This trust, tied to the formal valuation of this very collection, is now active. It's a fund for my future at any university I choose. An inheritance of stardust, as my mother called it. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. It is an inheritance that my own father, Mark Vance, chose to discard, selling these masterpieces for pocket change to decorate his new life. He didn't just try to erase me, he tried to erase her. I looked directly at him, my voice dropping but losing none of its power. He saw the paint, but he never saw the starlight. Every head in the room turned towards him. The cameras flashed. My father stood there, trapped in the glare of 100 pairs of eyes, his face a canvas of pure, unadulterated horror. His perfect, curated world, the illusion he had bought with my future, had just been publicly, brilliantly, and irrevocably turned upside down. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, for them. The next morning, the story wasn't just a local arts piece, it was a human interest drama splashed across news sites. Daughter resurrects lost artist's legacy, exposing father's betrayal. The stolen starlight, how Ilara Vance reclaimed her mother's art in her own future. The narrative was irresistible, the brilliant, wronged daughter, the forgotten, genius mother, and the callous father with his social climbing wife. Brenda's curated social media world imploded. The comments sections on her posts about charity galas and perfect family vacations became a toxic wasteland of accusations and scorn. The friends she had worked so hard to cultivate suddenly grew distant. Social status is a fragile ecosystem, and my father and Brenda had become pariahs overnight. Their perfect illusion, so carefully constructed, shattered under the weight of public truth. 2 days after the exhibition, a call came from an unknown number. It was my father. His voice was a wreck, a hollowed-out version of the one I remembered. "Ilara, we need to talk. You don't understand what you've done. You've ruined us." There was no apology. No remorse for what he did, only for the consequences he was now facing. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice devoid of the anger that had once consumed me. It was replaced by a calm, quiet finality. I told the truth. If the truth ruined you, perhaps your life was built on a very weak foundation. But Brenda, her reputation, my job. He stammered. Those were your choices, I said. You chose to erase Mom. You chose to erase me. You took her masterpiece and hung it on your wall like a cheap print. This isn't something I did to you. This is something you did to yourselves. Goodbye, Mark. I hung up before he could reply and blocked the number. That door was now closed forever. A week later, I got an email from Liam. The subject was simple, I'm sorry. Unlike my father's call, his words were steeped in genuine shame. He admitted he knew the money for his tuition had come from my fund, that he'd felt guilty but had been too weak and too swept up in the perfect family narrative to question his mother and my dad. I can't undo what they did, he wrote, but I can take responsibility for my part. I'm taking a semester off to work and I'm going to pay you back. Every single cent. I thought about it for a long time before replying. Liam, I wrote, I don't need the money. The Sarah Vance Trust has more than secured my future. Your debt isn't to me. It's to yourself. Use that money to build a life that is honest. Don't let their choices define yours. That will be payment enough. Whether he would or not was his story to write, not mine. I had closed my chapter with him. The exhibition was a resounding success. The art world was captivated by Sarah Vance's story and her stunning work. Museums were bidding for pieces. The trust, once an abstract concept in a journal, was now a multi-million-dollar entity. I didn't go back to chasing my old MIT dream of astrophysics. That dream belonged to a girl whose father had promised her the stars. My path was different now. I enrolled at Columbia University in New York, majoring in art history and business, to learn how to properly manage my mother's estate. With the Finch Foundation, I used a portion of the trust to establish the Stardust Scholarship, an annual grant for underrepresented female artists who needed a little help to have their truth seen. On a crisp autumn afternoon, I stood in the contemporary wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. There, on its own wall, hung Celestial Navigation No. 1. A small brass plaque next to it read, Sarah Vance, 1965 to 2003. Gift of the Sarah Vance Estate, managed by her daughter, Elara Vance. A group of students stood before it, their professor discussing the powerful brushwork in emotional depth. They spoke my mother's name with reverence. My father had spent my college fund and erased me from his life. He had tried to bury 2 generations of Vance women under the foundation of his perfect new family. My one move wasn't revenge in the way he would understand it. I didn't tear his life down. I simply built my mother's legacy up so high that it cast a shadow of truth over his, and his world of lies simply couldn't survive in the light. He had taken my future, so I resurrected her past. And in the glow of her starlight, I had finally, completely, found my own.